Hello, welcome to Set a Pick with Ethan and Nick. I'm Ethan Sturm, he's Nick Jablonski, and we're here to play a little game called Set a Pick. The rules are simple. We'll get a series of choices that we've never seen before, and we must each choose an option amongst the pair. This week we'll be focusing on the college division of US Quidditch Cup 12. So without further ado, let's get into it. Our first pairing is, more likely, an all-Texas final or a no-Texas final?
I think that a no-Texas final is more likely. I mean, we've seen the powerhouse that Kansas has been all year. And with the trouble that Texas has had with slow-balling teams staying in range with them and having a seeker catch to end their runs, we've seen it with Ball State, we've seen it with BGSU, we've seen it last year with Rochester. Yeah. The chances are that if they hit one of those teams in the Sweet 16, they might have it.
Yeah, first of all, let's be very clear. I don't think either of us believes a Texas team not named Texas State or UT is making the final.
I would agree.
So if you're going to go from there, first of all, there's a 50-50 shot they're on the same side of the bracket, and that rips that out right away. And then beyond that, they're just not scoring many points this year. They're going to play snitch range games. The bracket is huge. I think it's 48 teams. You need to grab a lot of snitches to get through that bracket. I'm not counting on it, especially because I think Kansas is the best team in the country. One of them is going to have to beat Kansas.
And I think that with Texas's problems with seekers in the past and their choice on who they send out at seeker, we've seen some quick catches this year, but we've also seen some struggles this year with catching quickly.
For sure. All right, let's go to the next slide. The best beater, Steve Belitsky from University of Rochester or Ryan Naraki from Texas State?
Who do you think, Ethan?
So first of all, we'll get it out of the way. We know some people on our staff are very partial to Tate K from UT. I don't think he is at that level. That's just not something that's ever interested me as a concept. He's kind of that classic UT model, I think, the athletic male beater who never really figures it out from a pure kind of getting it done perspective, the kind of the flow of the game. I think these might be the two best beaters in the game. I think it's Ryan Naraki. I think Belitsky's had a few great years. He's been a real factor for both University of Rochester as well as Rochester Whiteout. But he's never had that take over the game mentality, at least when not paired with another very talented beater. Naraki, we've seen him beat talented beaters and take over games from them all the time.
I would agree with that statement. But at the same time, I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate here and make the case for Belitsky. At this point, we have to go with the accolades. And we've seen Belitsky be a beater that has helped carry both Rochester Whiteout to a Final Four, whereas Naraki's always had that support of the Jackson Johnsons and like the Augustine Monroe to take over and play.
There's the Perry Wangs and the Tim Kwans, to be fair.
That's fair, right? But we've seen Belitsky be that #1 beater on a team that could go all the way to a finals team. We haven't seen Naraki take a team to the finals just yet, right? We saw him lose in the Final Four last year. And then the year before, he wasn't able to keep up with, even with the Jackson-Johnson pairing, he wasn't able to keep up with the athleticism.
For sure. All right, let's go to the next slide. More likely, a West team in the Final Four or no West team in the Final Four?
I'd say no West team in the Final Four. Like we've said here at the Ace Man, we're not necessarily too impressed with the West this year. We've seen like the Cal, who we thought was going to run away with the region and be a powerhouse this year, lost in the finals to a Utah State team, which we've said doesn't seem to have much of an offense. There is the possibility that UCLA gets hot through the bracket and carries their way through. But again, you have the Kansases, the Texas State. You have teams like Sam Houston, which have proven to be able to hang with these bigger teams in big minutes and have the chance to take over a West team.
For sure. I mean, I think the best thing West has going forward is quality. If you're kind of looking at teams that could really make a Final Four run, you're probably looking at somewhere between 12 and 15 teams across the country. The West has 3 of them, which means if the bracket breaks the right way, as much as Rochester truly made a very impressive run with just pure talent, they also caught a lot of breaks in the bracket in terms of what region they were coming out of. The second they were placed there, we said this is the easiest quadrant in the bracket. If you talk to Ethan Warren, he 100% agrees with you. That's kind of what it was. Could one of these teams get that? For sure. I really think that in terms of a bracket, the scariest team might be Utah State, even though I don't think they're the most talented. But when you throw a 2-male beater set that a lot of teams aren't used to seeing, and you have a good seeker, that can just make you win some games when it really counts.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, next slide. What will we see more of in the final match? A 2-male beater set or a standard set? And this is combined from both teams, percentage-wise.
I mean, I think you have to go 2-male beater set at this point. In the college game, it's been such an apparent statement that 2-male beater sets are what can win you games. right? I mean, we do have talented female beaters all throughout the college game.
No
That's
doubt.
very true, right? But especially in these longer games that you'll see, maybe with some of the stronger seekers in the college game moving on this year to take on with the club side, that you may see these longer snitch on pitch portions of games, in which case you have the potential to just see 2 male beater sets from 17 minutes on.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you're right. It's been pretty split over the past, half decade or so. You got QCB Rochester United was a very 2 male beater set game. Obviously, last year's final, Rochester exclusively played it. There's definitely some things that favor the 2 male beater set. First of all, 2 of the real contenders, Utah State and University of Rochester, are going to play it 100% of the time. So if either of them makes the final, you're going to get that. But I mean, even Kansas is really good at dosing it in when they think it's to their advantage. The one team we don't see it much from, and again, it's because of those talented female beaters, is Texas State, because they do have Bailey Fields, obviously Team USA player.
Yes.
Jessica Markle has also had a very good season. If they make the finals, the thing is, I don't know if I think Texas State's making this final. And even if they do, I think there's a decent chance someone throws 2 male at them, and then even if someone plays 100%, they play 1%, that's still over 50%.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact is that Texas State does have a tendency to, in later games in bracket play, break to a 2 male beater set, because they also have that depth and can go out there with 2 very talented female chasers and the drivers to end games.
Alrighty, so let's swing it to the next slide. Biggest contribution by a Team USA player in this tournament: Bailey Fields, Elizabeth Ng, or Rachel Hield?
Why don't you start with this one?
All right, no problem. I think it's Rachel Hield, and I don't think it is necessarily because of her talent level, though I obviously think all 3 are very talented. But we've seen this season from UCLA and from Texas State just some questionable use of these talented players. Elizabeth Ng was invisible in their semifinal loss to Utah State. Bailey Fields didn't get on the field for 11 minutes in the Southwest Regional Final, and maybe those things will change at Cup. But at least Kansas is a team, I mean, Rachel used to be captain of the team last year. This is a team who recognizes her talent, who's going to put her in positions to succeed. We talked just now about them playing those 2 male beater sets. She's obviously a huge factor in those. I mean, she's a huge factor in Team USA 2 male beater sets. That's how talented she is. So I think when that's settled, I also think Kansas is just the best team, so she's going to probably have the best tournament.
See, I think it's Elizabeth Ng in that case, because even if UCLA is struggling, right, and has to defensive seek or play a female seeker, Elizabeth Ng is probably arguably the best female seeker in the game right now and can swing those catches and always leaves them as a threat to pull consistently no matter what. Whereas a lot of teams you'll see when they send out a female seeker, it's often strictly to defensive seek, and as soon as they're back in range, they'll pull that female seeker in order to go to their more traditional male seeker. She's also a phenomenal chaser, and if UCLA can figure out how to utilize her and get her the ball in space, she's a devastating threat to completely change their offense.
Right, and it's funny because we all agree that Quidditch is a game of beaters, and neither of us mentioned the beater, so I'll just stand for her for a second. I mean, Bailey's incredibly talented. If they don't tend to put her and Ryan on the field together, when they do, they have a very, very, very scary beater pair. That beater pair, played the right way, could run the table in this tournament, no doubt. It allows them to not be scared into the 2 male beater sets that other teams trying to force on them. And if they're not that, they just have that athletic talent in the quaffle game. And really, that's what it comes down to with all 3 of these incredible players. They can shift the dynamics of what the team has to commit to strategically, and that's what makes them so scary.
And it's not like we've never seen a Texas team not play their strongest pairings in the beginning in order to see what works and what doesn't, when they know that they can always revert back to what many arguably would consider their strongest pairing.
All right, let's go to our last slide. I like this one. Best format, pool play or Swiss flights?
So I think I know your answer to this one, and I would agree with it. I think Swiss flights create the most interesting games early on, right? They allow us to see who in the game of Quidditch, which is often a star-based game, can work their way around and figure out the best way to manage their stars. Because a lot of times we see that teams will play their stars all through pool play and then just flame out in the bracket.
Right.
And Swiss really forces you to change that up and figure out when and where you can get the minutes of rest, where you can get your depth in there. And especially in the college game, where there's so many up-and-coming stars, it just makes for better games.
Right, yeah. And yeah, that's what we're touching on. I don't even care how it affects the actual results, which sounds terrible to say. I care about the fact that it makes for good Quidditch. We got so many really great matchups on Saturday in the college game. I believe I ref Texas State, Kansas was one of them. I feel like Arizona State had a big one too. I'm blanking on who they played.
University of Rochester.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Rochester's only lost the whole weekend.
There you go. These are games that on Saturdays we didn't used to get. We used to get all the favorites just blowing people out, resting their stars. It wasn't interesting. Now, for us to be saying this, I think it's even more important because from a pre-tournament analysis standpoint, flights are terrible. Yeah. You can't analyze anything. Pools, you can do your pool by pool pods. You can really break it down. You can do whatever you want. Flights, it's like, well, we know who they're playing in their first game, and here's the other 16 teams they might play.
Yeah, and as two coaches, right, of teams
it's so much worse for scouting.
Require scouting to really, really be efficient. I now have to go through and scout 15 teams, some of which there may not even be film of, right? Because I don't know who I'm seeing when and where, and like my team really definitely requires that knowledge beforehand to really have an understanding and play their best.
You could always do the University of Rochester strategy and just crowdsource your scouting mid-tournament. But yeah, I think pool play is just not as good as Swiss for the huge tournament we're running. I think even in the club side, which we'll get to probably in another pod, that it might be better just because the field's smaller, but for that huge field, it's going to get you the best games.
Yeah, and I think from the club side, the talent gap is a little bit less. And so your bottom games, like you probably have your top 4 or 5 teams who are going to run through everyone. But the rest of it, you still get some interesting games. Whereas with Swiss, you're constantly getting interesting games for everyone involved. Like even the teams that go 0-4, right, are playing constantly maybe snitch range games or making big wins for their program, right? Like as Tufts went 1-3 last year, every single game was snitch range. And that just makes for interesting Quidditch.
For sure. All right, well, that's going to do it for us today. But we will see you back for more Set a Pick on a future week. Take care.
Take care.